Talk. We're here with Gary Krupp, who is a Merrimack resident and is running for the school board in the town of Merrimack. We're going to talk about budgets mostly. We're going to get right into it. If you want information about Gary's bio, there's an awesome video online at Merrimack Patch that was done with Dave McCrae,
right,
which really just talks about Gary the person, not Gary the candidate. So if you really want to learn about him, his life and everything, it's fantastic. So, first question, school spending. Probably one of the most contentious issues in any town. It accounts for a majority of spending in many local governments. Give us a brief overview of any experience you have with budgets and planning and how that experience makes you a better candidate for the Merrimack School Board.
Sure. So, the last 10 years I was in the Air Force. I spent time doing various jobs. First in the Air Force Research Lab, I was in charge of small research programs. When you say small by Department of Defense, you know, it's about $1 million, $1.5 million programs. And so by running those in labs, like a lot of other things, you've kind of got to prove your worth to get your budget. And so I had a group of scientists that I would have to pay their salaries, their burden salaries, you know, benefits and everything else, as well as try to go do some science. I worked in space research, so we were trying to, at one time, do hypersonic reentry creates plasmas around these bodies that come in, and so we were interested in modeling that for various defense reasons. And so I would have to go up and pitch our budget, put together a staff that could address this problem, define the science that we were going to go study, how it had military applicability, and then you know, defend it. And so that would give me a budget, and you have to defend it, you know, well out from the time you're going to execute this thing, and that kind of thing. So I kept, you know, I did so well in my first program that they gave me a new program that was you know, the first program I was taking care of somebody else's work that they had already started up. This new program, they wanted to do defensive space, which was a new area they wanted to march into. They had a bunch of atmospheric scientists, and they said, hey, take these atmospheric scientists and see if you can get them working on defensive space and get a program funded, which I did. So it was about $1.5 million, and it's a pretty successful program as well. And then after that, I went on to work in a very big acquisition program for AWACS. So it was a $2 billion program, and we spent you know, lots of money. We would probably spend in a week of meetings out at Boeing maybe $50,000 and not think twice about it. And so at that level, the numbers get very big. Sometimes people get a little sloppy, and even though I was in charge of things, I actually had one of my people in every meeting give me, before the meeting started, what the count was. And what I meant by that was they would count how many contractors, how many government guys, how many government contractors, because we had our own experts. And so that I had a running number, rough number for each of those folks. So I'd quickly calculate what the meeting was costing. And I'd start the meeting by letting everyone else know what this meeting was costing us. We're going to spend $6,000 an hour on this meeting, so let's make sure that we're focused. You know, let's make sure that we're spending taxpayer money wisely. Let's remember that we're all taxpayers, including you guys out there in the audience. And so things like that, even though we were a large program, I was always very interested in making sure that none of the money was wasted. And so those things, and having to get programs done through Congress, you know, Congress comes in a lot of times, swacks your program, you know, all right, how are you going to do without this $1 million that you planned on having this year? Okay, we're going to have to reorganize our schedules. We're going to have to, or in some cases, they would hurt you bad enough that it's worth going back and fighting over it. So you go back up your chain and you fight over it. You come up with the reasons why, you know, they're going to cost your program more money in the long run because of that, whatever the reasons might be. And sometimes you get it plussed back. And so having experience in that, I think, and quite frankly, this last year in the school, there was some uncertainty with what was going on at the State House. And that's not uncommon at all in the DoD. You know, so you always are under uncertainty. Congress, at its whim, can come in with a congressional staffer and say your program's not important anymore, or, you know, what we're doing is more important. We're going to shove a bunch of money your way, and you have to execute it. And so that can be an equally vexing problem. So the bottom line is I've dealt with, you know, uncertain funding sources and money that is the taxpayers' money. And I think I've done a pretty good job so far.
What are your thoughts about past school spending in Merrimack? Any spending priorities that you've observed? You've been on the budget committee for the school. And how would you, as a member of the school board, navigate the potential minefield moving forward with what you've been given, basically?
Sure. So, school budget proposed for next year, the one that will be on the ballot, $65 million. And so it's real easy to break it down this way. If you think of it as 31 million is totally related to salaries, and an index on that salary would be FICA taxes, the employer contribution for FICA, dental, medical, and retirement. If you put those together, that's another 16 million. So salary and benefits are directly related to salary is 47 million of the 65 million. So that's a little over 70%. So there's no meaningful conversation about the budget that you can have without talking about salary. If you add to that another 6 million, which is non-salary related special education funding, which is essentially untouchable. By federal and state laws, you're required to basically spend that level of funding. And so, so that right there is 82% of the budget. 82% of the budget is very inflexible. And just out of curiosity, if you go beyond that, it's a $2 million for transportation, another $2 million for maintenance, and there's about $700,000 on instructional texts and furniture and things like that, and then $3 million I think that falls into other. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you really have to find a way to deal with that monster that is the salary. And so what I think they've done in the past to deal with the declining enrollments is trim teaching staff, which, as I've said publicly, was probably appropriate. I think we're at a point now, though, that we haven't trimmed administrative or support staff to the same extent. And I think that enrollments are down to the point that we have a real opportunity. And I think that might come off as funny to some people, but opportunity is what it is. So we're about 700 to 800 students less than what we had when the middle school was built. And back in 2003, 2004, that time frame. And so we're projected to lose about another 300 students over the next 5 years.
How many kids are in the middle school, do you know?
So if we're talking about just the 7th and 8th grade, there's currently about 600. At the time when we built the middle school, there were 800. So we're down a couple of hundred in that group. And so what I think those numbers give us, though, and as a matter of fact, when we were still building the middle school, that school had 900. So we had, or close to 900 actually. So we had bigger numbers in that building. And I think what that allows us to do is have an opportunity to move to a 5-school model. And so we're currently in a 6-school model. If we move to a 5-school model, I'd be a voice on the board that asked administration, go off and bring us back a plan to move us into 5 schools. And here's why I think it can be done. Just by the numbers, by the enrollment numbers, you can take the 6th grade that's in the upper elementary school right now, which is about 300 students, and you could add those to the middle school. And assuming that the space is all worked out, that would be about 900 students in the middle school, which would be on the order of what it was when we opened. You could take the 5th grade and put them back into the elementary schools, which is where they were before we had a middle school. What that would do for us is open up a building. The James Massacola Upper Elementary School, JMU's, would be vacant at that point. And so we would allow 2 principals that are in there. That would, just cutting the 2 principal positions would save the district $230,000 in the budget. The administrative staff that supports them. In JMU's facility, there are 49 support staff positions. Now, all 49 of those wouldn't be trimmed. A lot of those are para-educators, and those would move with the students. And the key would be that we wouldn't affect education or teacher ratios, because those teachers and students would just be learning in a different building. You know, we're really not trimming those, but what we would get rid of is the one library that we have to maintain in there. You know, the one special education coordinator, which is an administrative position. The one nurse, the one, you know, every building has one of these kind of things, and that would be one less that we'd have to maintain. And we could take a pretty healthy bite out of those 49 support positions and make a serious savings to the current budget. Beyond that, we have a need for a school administrative unit, SAU, administration facility, as well as a special education facility. And the Planning and Building Committee has done extensive reports on this. And the last report in 2010, as a matter of fact, was to prepare for what's going to be a warrant article next year. Next year they're going to come to the voters and ask to build a new facility. And that's what Planning and Building decided. They looked at leasing space, buying space, building a new building, renovating some space in another building that they already have, and decided that the cleanest solution was to build a facility for $1.8 million. And so what I say is, by removing this, one of the places that they looked at renovating was JMU's, and the bunch of the negatives behind that. And by the way, the renovation to JMU's cost $500,000. So if I'm able to get administration to agree that that's a decent thing to do and vacate that building, now instead of paying $1.8 million to build a new facility, we can go back to that plan to $500,000. $1.3 million in cost avoidance. And the negatives, part of the reason that wasn't chosen as an option then was because school was still going to be in session. There was problems with busing. There was problems with adding the 12 parking spots that are required for special education office. There was, problems with classrooms interfering with offices and vice versa. And so if that facility no longer has education going on, that's not a problem anymore. And that opens that up. So you've got probably, roughly, I'd say conservatively, you could save $1 million in salary and benefits costs just by trimming the support staff, or close to it, and $1.3 million in cost avoidance. So I think it's something that has merit and could be, if the will of the board was behind it, and of course I would only be one voice of 5 on the board, but if I was compelling in my arguments and administration could come back to us with a 5-school plan, I think that there's significant savings for now and for the future.
Krupp